Hi there again, guys. It's Timothy from Hyperfly Drones, and today I'm going to be talking about some issues about the Mavic 2 Pro gimbal and Mavic 2 Zoom gimbal that I've come across repairing them. So if you have an issue with, for example, no image transmission signal, gimbal motor overload, or just your gimbal isn't working correctly, I'm just going to run through a basic troubleshooting setup of how to find out what the issue with your gimbal is. So here I've got a Mavic 2 Pro gimbal. There's some parts that have been taken off of it so far, but the issue with it is it will never align, so it just says gimbal motor overloaded. So with this one, the issue is actually that after the crash, the roll motor has taken so much damage that the endpoints have been destroyed, so the gimbal actually moves way past the point that it should be, and it makes contact right there, as you can see. So that's one of the issues that could be causing your gimbal motor overload. Another issue that you should check is to see if there's any springiness in any of the axes. So every axis should move smoothly like this. And if your gimbal, for example, you try to point it down and it starts to spring up, that's usually an issue. That means that your roll arm is usually bent. You usually get like a springy effect. As you can see on this one, there's a little bit of that effect, but it's not as extreme as it could be. So another issue is actually the yaw motor was defective on some of the Mavic 2 Pros from factory. So for example, if you put your drone into sport mode and you get a gimbal motor overload, there was a defect with some of the yaw motors from the factory, which could also be causing the issue of your gimbal going completely limp while in flight. That's a pretty common issue that I've run across, and it requires replacing this whole entire section, which houses the yaw motor and the roll motor as well. So that's going to have to be completely replaced. And if your drone has no image transmission signal, which you get a black screen, or when you try to autofocus or focus with your by clicking in the app to see if your camera will autofocus. If your camera doesn't autofocus, it could be an issue with your camera sensor with the focusing device that focuses the lens. That could be one of the issues. And the second issue that you could be running across is there is damage to your ribbon cable. So this ribbon cable runs from the camera sensor all the way through here and directly to the board on the top, which then plugs into your motherboard. So if you have no image, that could also be an issue. Another issue that you could run across is you could get an code Air 200. I believe that that's what it's called when you're in the app, and it will prevent a takeoff, and that's usually when this motherboard or this gimbal controlling board isn't plugged into the drone. You'll usually get an error code 200. So this gimbal, as you can see, the roll points have been completely destroyed, so the gimbal is actually just scraping against the top. So that means this roll motor is completely destroyed. I mean, you could try and fix it, but most likely you won't, so I'm just going to be completely tearing down this gimbal and showing you how to replace it with a brand new part like I have here. So on this gimbal, I've taken apart a little bit of it. So I've taken off the lens that goes on the top of it, and I've also taken off a little plastic cover that goes on here, which is just basically glued on with a silicone adhesive. So after you remove that, you'll be just about at this step right here. So what you need to do next is I'm going to take apart these 4 screws. There's 4 of them here. As you can see, I've already taken them out. So I'm just going to take this cover right off. And once you get in here, you're going to have to disconnect this ribbon cable right here. So just disconnect that. That's the cable you're going to need to replace if you have a no image transmission issue with your drone. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove 4 Phillips screws here, which house the camera sensor. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to take off these 3 screws here and 3 smaller screws here. These screws are usually covered by a little plastic piece like this, so you just need a small flathead. You just get in underneath it and then you just pry these off. There's going to be two little circles that have adhesive that cover up these screws. Next, you're going to want to remove this little silver piece, so I usually like to come in from behind and just push on that little lip. And usually you can get it to come out pretty easily. Yeah, as you can see, it's already starting to come out. So if you just get behind it, you should be just fine. And then from here, you're just going to want to grab some pliers, take the cable, and then push it through the little hole where the bearing is. And then from there, pop that off like that. And then from here, there's going to be 3 more hidden Phillips screws that you're going to have to take off as well. Okay, once you've done that, you're gonna have to pop off this plastic cover. So you just come in from this side, just push out. There's gonna be there's two small little plastic clips that hold it in. So if you just push out, you can get this whole entire piece to just come right out. Just like that. And then under here, there's gonna be one more cable that you have to disconnect, which goes to the pitch motor. So you're just gonna remove that, and then that's pretty much it with this part. So I'm going to take this cable, pull it through, and then from here I'm actually going to disassemble the top of the board. So take that off like that. There's going to be a little clip here. I'm going to want to pop that up just like that. Got a little bit into the cooling adhesive. And then from here, there's just going to be 4 screws on each side. You're going to want to remove those. Just like that. And then there's going to be another connector on the back here. So just slowly pull on it, and then it should just disconnect just like that. Just going to set that aside, and then there's just going to be 3 more screws up here. And then we're going to have the gimbal assembly disconnected from the plastic gimbal dampener. Just going to pull that through carefully. Just like that. Okay, now that we can see the assembly, this cable was perfectly fine, and I think this is the newer version of the yaw motor, so this drone didn't have an issue with that. It had an issue where it wasn't a crash, and just the roll motor just goes way beyond its endpoints, which makes it have contact right there, which you can see it's had some marks right there. So from here, I'm just gonna go in here and I'm gonna push out this plastic cover like that. Just pops right off. And then from here, I'm gonna switch to a very small flathead. And I'm just gonna pry on this connector right here just so I can get it to disconnect slowly. So it's a little hard to get off. Just like that, it'll pop right off. And then next step, well, actually, let's see here. I'm gonna remove these 3 Phillips screws. As you can see, there's 3 more. And don't worry about memorizing which screws come off. I'll show you that when I'm putting the gimbal back together. So then once again, switch to the small flathead. These cables have an adhesive, so you're just gonna wanna pry them apart just like that, and then that's it. In this part, it's a little hard to remove this piece. It has quite a bit of adhesive, but I'm going to take the cable, pull it down so it's out of the way, and then I'm just going to sneak in there and just push that cover out just like that. And now the only part that I need off of this assembly is just the cable, because I'm going to be replacing everything else using brand new parts. Feed that through there, pull this through, and then take this cable, and it's going to come out this back end over here. I'm going to take this little serial number sticker as well. This corresponds to the serial number of the camera sensor, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and then I'm going to install it on the other one. So yeah, you can't see, but if you remove this little clip and pull this motor out, you're going to see a little spot where there's supposed to be endpoints for the motor, and then most likely under here they're going to be both crushed on both sides because the endpoints aren't where they're supposed to be. And you can actually feel the motor's a little bit rough as well. So it's definitely been damaged. So now I'm gonna move on to the new part. So here it is right here. This is a new assembly. And you can see, I can feel this motor is a lot smoother, and I can already tell that the endpoints are a lot lower than what they were on the other one. So this one hasn't been damaged. So on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the same covers, just like on the other one. Well, that one had quite a bit of adhesive, but I did get it off. Did take quite a bit of force though. Interesting. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm gonna take my cable that I removed from the other gimbal assembly, because I know this one is fine because all the motors worked, and I do have an image when I hook it up to the Go 4 app. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna install this new cable, and I'll show you how to wire that. So you're just gonna start off with the longer end, this end, the one that plugs into the board that goes in on the top. You're just gonna take that, feed that through here. You want to get it just right so it doesn't pinch any of the wires as well. There's one side where it'll go in easier. Like that, and then I'm gonna take this cable and I'm gonna feed it through this side. Pull that through, take this part, push that up and through here. Once again, have to use a specific side so it doesn't get jammed. There we go. And this assembly had a little bit of grease, so I'm gonna wipe that away. There's just a little bit of grease on it. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cover that I popped off, and all you do is just push it in like that. You'll feel it, and then take this piece and just push up. It'll just snap right into place. Next, you want to take this cable and set it up just right, so you just have the right amount between this cable plugging in and this connector. So just pull a little bit on that and then get that distance right. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the replacement roll arm, and the way it's going to go is like this. So on this side, this is where we took out this larger metal piece, and then this side is where the pitch motor will connect to. So we're just going to take this wire, and this feeds straight through the middle. There we go. Second cable goes through, second piece of the cable, and then these two pieces right here, these go in on the sides as well, like that. They have to all go through their cavities. Next thing I'm going to do is grab the Phillips and the screw that I'm going to be using. Let's see here. It's going to be this style right here. Looks like that, so it's going to be perfectly flat. Next step is grabbing this cable right here and then plugging that connector back into place. Just like that, it's going to be a nice click. And then this, there's no adhesive here, but tuck the cable into the corner. Take this piece and then feed it through right here. Pull that through all the way. That's good, and then let's see what we got here. Okay, it looks like on the gimbal the whole assembly for the pitch motor was damaged too. You can see there's a little bit of a fracture there. It wouldn't affect performance, but the cosmetics are bad, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that as well. And the piece I'm going to be using is this piece right here. Okay, so I had to clean this pitch motor. It was brand new, but it had some sort of grease that was in the motor, so I had to clean that up. So now that we're back on track, I'm going to go ahead and install the whole pitch assembly pretty much. So just slide this in, and then you're just going to want to get that little clip to click right in. Double check it just to make sure it's good, and then I'm going to go ahead and reinstall those. It's going to be like the extremely small screws. And they're the same style, they're flathead. Well, not flathead, just the screws extremely flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and install one of those in there for now. And next piece, I'm gonna reinstall this cover right here. I actually have one that's in a bit better condition right here, so. Go ahead and use this one. The way you're going to install this is the side that has the little clips that are wider. This is going to go on the side where the pitch motor is, and then the side that has the two clips that are closer to each other, that's going to be the side where we're going to reassemble all the rest of this stuff and where the wires will go through. So we're just going to take that, get it in between there. Get that piece to lock into the middle. I'm just going to take this then, push it in. You'll hear a lot of clicks actually when you're doing this step. And then on this side as well, clip that in, and then make sure everything's clipped in on this side as well. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the other small screws that hold the pitch motor in, which is just 2 more left. Just like that. Next part I'm going to install is going to be this piece right here. And then for this one, you're going to have 3 screws. They're going to be quite a bit larger. And they also have a section where it's very flat, where there's no thread, and then it goes with where the thread is. So it's a bit of like a spacer almost. And you're just going to need 3 of these right here, and then that's going to go into your gimbal assembly. And another thing to take note of is this piece where there's a little piece of metal that connects to the bearing. That's the piece that has to point directly into the roll arm, so it's going to go on just like that. And that way all your screws will actually line up as well. Here's another one. And one more. that's all of those in place. Just like that. Next step is we're gonna grab this piece right here. Also double check on the surface, it could have a bend, so you want to make sure that this is a perfect circle. If it has a bit of a bend in it, if it's been crashed, it's also gonna interfere and cause resistance on your pitch motor, so definitely want to check on that. Take this cable, feed it through the little hole. Keep the cable locked in here, it'll make it easier to align it, and then push everything through. Push that all the way through, make sure the cable isn't getting pinched anywhere. And then for this part, you're going to use the exact same 3 screws that you used previously. They're the ones that have a little bit of a spacer almost on a spot where there's no thread. And you're going to install 3 of those. So pretty much from here on, the whole assembly is pretty much put back together. So only steps really left is putting the camera sensor into place, getting it attached to the rest of the gimbal dampener, and then going into the computer and running the program to recalibrate all of the gimbal motors to each other, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing next. So I'm going to take the camera sensor, it goes in like this, just like that, where the cable connector is directly parallel to the place where it's going to connect. So just like that, clip that in, and then from here you're going to use the 3 screws. Probably going to be covered in a little bit of that silicone, but they're a much larger thread compared to the other screws, so much larger thread, and it's going to be going into plastic, which makes sense as well. So I'm just going to want to align all 3 of those holes. And you will also have to be removing the silicone afterwards because you're going to need it to install the cover that goes into the gimbal. There's all 3 screws in. Now I'm going to grab this back shield. You may need to add a little bit of thermal paste here, but it should be just fine. It's not a big deal. You're going to take that piece where the thermal paste was, and that's supposed to align with a large surface here for heat dissipation. So I'm going to take that and then just lock that into place. And here you're going to use the exact same small screws. It's the one that we used on the roll arm, so it's just going to be 4 of these. Right now I'm just going to install one because I'm just going to be testing the gimbal out. I don't want to put everything back together. I want to make sure it works first. So here, as you can see, every axis should be perfectly smooth. And now, as you can see, when I move the pitch motor, it locks into place. It doesn't spring back like it was before. Okay. And I did get another assembly for the gimbal dampening because the other one was broken. It was in a pretty hard crash, so this cable goes through here, and then the other small little yaw motor cable gets pushed through as well. Like that. And then here you're going to use a much finer thread screw. They're going to be very short, and then the tip of it actually isn't tapered off like the other ones, the ones that we used on the roll arm. Just going to go ahead and put one of those in. Wipe off this grease. And then just 2 more to go. Okay, now we're just gonna take this board here and reinstall this. So I usually like to take the cable and just tuck it into here, just so it's pointing straight up, it doesn't interfere. You want to get this cable and fold it all the way back so that the spot where it's going to be connecting is pointing up towards the board. Just take this, slip this through here. It's a little difficult to do, but you can get the hang of it. And boom, you're gonna hear a little click from that cable. Pull that through, and then you're gonna use one of these larger coarse thread screws as well, much larger compared to the other ones. Gonna go ahead and install all of these. Gonna go ahead and just install 2 for now. Take this, and there's actually a little bit of a piece of tape here, just so it doesn't make any contact. Go ahead and install that if I can as well. It's not necessary, but I'd rather keep it there. Now just take this piece. I want to make sure this connector is fully plugged in. There we go. And then I'm just going to go ahead and install the top cover. Just like that. Now I'm just going to take the drone. It depends on which Mavic 2 Pro you got, which version. Some of them are going to have a much finer thread like this, 1.5mm hex screw. And you can tell if in here you're going to have little basically metal inserts, so you can tell that it threads into metal. Versus this one actually just has the plastic. So for this one, we're just going to use the standard 1.5mm screws. Just going to take the gimbal, put it in just like this. Actually, I'm going to plug the cable in first. First the front, and then the back goes into place. And then I'm just gonna screw it down with one screw for now, because I'm just gonna see if the gimbal works. So as you can see, the gimbal did move in every axis, but you can see it's locked into a completely crooked position. So when I'm holding the drone straight, you can see the gimbal is just in a completely sideways angle. So I'm going to show you how to fix that, but I can tell that the gimbal is working now, so I'm going to put most of the parts back onto it, give it a final calibration, test that it has an image, and then I'm going to show you how to put the final touches on it. I'm gonna go ahead and install the last screws. There's just gonna be 2 more, one on each side. Here's another one. Okay, good. That's all done. And then just gonna be another one of the small ones. which is gonna go right here. Let's see here. Like that, and then I'm gonna install the large piece that was on the back. I'm pretty sure it's a counterweight, but I'm not gonna assume anything. Make sure that's pressed in all the way. Okay, good. And pretty much the last step here is going to be installing these little plastic covers on each side to cover that up. I'm not going to do that just yet because I don't want to damage them if I have to take them apart. And then I'm just going to have to remove all of the glue that's left here, and then I'm going to reinstall the plastic cover that goes in there. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But first I'm going to go and hook it up to a computer and show you how to recalibrate the gimbal. Okay, so the first command is going to run through right now, and you can see the gimbal is moving through its axes, and as you can see now it's pointing perfectly straight. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, get the second command. Turn it back on again. Gimbal is gonna move. It's pointing straight, and then I'm gonna wait for the IMU to initialize. Okay, and now I'm gonna run the second command through. And it's gonna slowly move through every axis. Okay, now it's fully calibrated, so I'm going to turn it off, and I don't need the computer anymore. Okay, so while I was off camera, I actually cleaned up most of the residue from the previous installment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to install these little covers on the sides, which they just glue on. They're just held in by basically double-sided tape adhesive. Reinstall both of those. Perfect. And now that I've done all of that, I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this cover right here. I want to make sure all the screws are tightened in, and then I'm just gonna use some of DJI's adhesive. So this is the same stuff that was on there previously, except just in a different color. So I'm just gonna install it in the exact same little corners where it's held into place. There's 3 little divots pretty much, so I'm just gonna put glue in those spots. And you don't really need too much, you just need enough where it'll just hold it in place. Should be a pretty good amount. And so now if you look on this cover, there's going to be 2 holes, 2 little divots here and then 1 on the bottom. So those 2 have to go on the top, so the cover is just going to go in like this. I want to make sure that the camera sensor is pretty clean as well, because it'll be pretty hard to clean it afterwards. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop that down. get that to lock into place. Push it down a little bit. It's a little hard for it to lock into place, but after you do that, you just want to get rid of the residue. I'm just going to wipe away this little bit of residue down here. Let's see here. Not sure why, but I guess the storage in my phone ran out, so the rest of the video was recorded, but I mean, it was pretty much over with, so all I had to do was just reinstall these little plastic covers that cover up the wires, which are just held in by double-sided tape, as you can see here. And then afterwards, cleaned both surfaces and reinstalled this little plastic shroud, and reinstalled out with DJI's silicone glue, so perfect. And then just reinstalled the lens cover. After that, you just have 4 1.5mm screws that go in, hold the gimbal in, plug that one connector in, and then up here there's going to be 2 of the silver and finer thread 1.5mm screws. And afterwards, you should have a working gimbal. At least I hope this helped you troubleshoot it. And as you can see, the gimbal is fully working now compared to what it was doing before. Great. If you guys have any questions or need some tips, please just email me at hyperflight111@gmail.com.